Okay, at this point we've unpacked all the parts and pieces. We have all the rail sections, we have all the legs, we have the felt pads that go on the feet, the wiring, the chassis, the seat, the batteries, the remotes. Everything's laid out on the floor, so we know we have all our parts. Okay, now that we've got all the parts laid out, there's two things we want to find: the installation manual and the drawing. The drawing's going to show you where every step, every leg goes on every step as you go up the staircase. We're going to start at the bottom, which in this case is this side. We're going to work our way around. So each one's labeled and tells you where the step goes. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up the feet. They're all labeled on the bottom with a number. We're going to pick them up, we're going to look at the number, we're going to put a felt pad on the bottom of each step, then we're going to lay them on the steps as we go up the staircase. If you're on a carpeted, you don't necessarily need felt pads. In an application like this where we have tile and nice wood, we're going to use the felt pad under the feet before we go up the staircase. So we're going to put the felt pads on the feet, then we're going to put the feet with this drawing on each step, and then once we get those in place, then we'll put the rails into the feet. On each leg, we're going to put a set screw in the back, and that's the set screw that's going to hold the support of the leg once we put the rails in. So you only screw them in a little bit. You don't want them too tight where the rail won't go in, the leg won't go in properly. Okay, we've got all our feet on the stairs now, so we're ready to start trying to put pipes in place. I've grabbed 3 screws because the screws are going to tie the pipes together. We're going to take the first piece of pipe, which has got a number on it. Each piece of pipe is labeled with a number on it, and they go in order starting at the bottom with number 1 all the way up. If you look at the other pipes, there's the same tag on each pipe. So then we're going to take this piece of pipe and lay it into these legs. So all he's going to do is slide it down into the feet, and we're going to let it just kind of sit there. Okay, once we start to put the pipes in place, what we need to do is run our lower wire. There's 2 ways to do it. You could wait till afterwards and try to run a fish tape through the entire application, or you can run the fish tape and run the wire as you do it. I've found from our experiences, if you run the wire while you're doing it, it's a lot easier because you don't get stuck with trying to run. If your unit's 30 or 40 feet long, that's a long way to go with a fish tape to try and get your wire through. So it's been much easier to actually run the wire as you run the pieces of pipe, to run the wire through it and do it piece by piece as you go around the staircase. Okay, as you can see, we pulled the wire through the pipe, and we'll just keep feeding it through. And as we go up each step, we'll just feed it through each piece until we get to the very top of the staircase. Keep in mind to keep the bottom nice and straight so you don't tangle it all or don't twist it or pinch it or tie it in knots as it comes through. And then when you get to the very end, what we normally do is we tie it to the bottom leg so that as you're doing this, you don't pull too much wire through, so you have enough left at the bottom so when you're finished, you have enough to wire in the charge stations. You have a charge station at the top and bottom. That's what this wire is for. If we had a mid-station landing, when we get to the mid-station, we'd want to look at the wire there too, potentially bring it out, and then tie it in a knot again, and then go the rest of the way. The mid-station would be if the chair was going to park here or partially up the staircase, and they're going to park it because they don't want it parked at the bottom. The mid-station landing would be tied to the bottom rail, but you're going to have a hole in the rail to have the wires come out. So as you're running the wires are going to come out at the top and the bottom through this hole. If there's a mid-station landing, it could be anywhere in this pipe. You could put a hole here if the customer wanted to have a mid-station landing there. Mid-station can't be on a turn, and it can't be on any kind of bend in the pipe. It has to be in a straight section. But if they wanted it to park here, you could drill a hole here, pull your wire out, run it back in, pop out there, and add a mid-station landing in that location.
Yes, sir.
In a case like this where you're mounting this on the stairs, you can snug this set screw up just a little bit just to hold the pipe so it doesn't fall over on you. Just a little snug so it kind of holds the legs in place for you now. So see, now it's not going to fall over. So while we're working on doing our wiring up through here, the legs and the pipe stay still. We're just going to fish the wire up through the bottom piece. Again, as I said, you could do this at the end. However, I found that it's when you have a lot of turns like this where you're doing a 180-degree turn, if you try to fish it through at the end, it just tends to get bound up and doesn't work as well. You might need to wiggle it a little bit and it'll slide in place. Once it's slid in place, you have 3 screws. One in the front of this, the large pipe, one directly behind it, and one in the lower pipe. Slide those in and just snug this up. You don't want to kill the bolts, they just need to be snug. Once the whole unit's in place, the legs really hold it still. It's not going to move, it's not going to really go anywhere. You have one of these T-handled Allen wrenches. It's got a little ball on the end so you can kind of run these screws in pretty quickly. And it'll make quick work of your installation. You can see as I'm doing this, it's actually pulling the pipe together. And we're going to continue doing this as we go up through the staircase. You want to close all the gaps though. Ensure the gaps are closed, because if you have a huge gap, like this is a little much, the unit can have a bump right there as the wheels go across it. And you might want to go from side to side, and in some cases it might be a little snug. You might need to just bang it just a little bit. That sometimes helps. A rubber mallet or the back of your hand. Just don't hurt your hand doing it. And double check that one. And you can see our joint's pretty nice looking. It's pretty tight. And now with that done, we're going to continue to go up to the top of the stairs. Okay, we now have the entire rail installed. It's on the stairs. However, one of the things we like to do is ensure these legs are loose. You can see this is it's not tight at this point in time. If you go to this step, you can lift this up and down. These are not tight to the ground. The very bottom one, the very top ones are snugged, so the lift doesn't go anywhere. The other one we snugged up was this one right here. Because what you're doing here is you kind of have a fork here, and you need to get this to the right angle. So the top is kind of set, the bottom's set. We're now going to put an angle meter on this piece of pipe. This section is supposed to be 28 degrees. This section here is supposed to be 34 degrees. So we're going to put an angle meter on here to ensure that it's 34 degrees. We're going to use this leg here really to adjust that up and down to get the angle right, because the top is set because the floor is there. The bottom is set because the floor is there. When we adjust this corner up and down, it's going to change the angle and the pitch of the whole lift. So you need to make sure that that's in the right place. All the rest of the legs, as I said, are loose and floating. Once we get this snug and we get this set, we're going to put the chair on. We're going to run the chair down and around just with the top set and the bottom set. We're going to hold the rail in place. We're going to bring it down and ensure that our clearances here are really good, because right now we have the ability to move the lift like this or like this. And we're going to set it so we have the tightest clearance around this corner, because this is your tightest spot in the house. So we're going to bring the chair down here, run it around here, shove this in, and get it as tight as we possibly can get it so the customer has as much clearance for his knees in front of him. Then we'll bolt this corner down, recheck our angles, and then we'll start bolting the rest of the staircase down and tightening everything up. Okay, so now we came around the corner, and according to our drawing, you can see where the angles are supposed to be. We're supposed to be at 33 here, or 34. We're at 33.1. So at 33.1, that's close enough. You don't have to change anything. The other thing to check is the very top, because this has a level at the top. That should be level and flat. We can adjust that later with the feet that are up there, so we're not going to worry about that right now, because this angle, the other angle of the pipe are exactly where they need to be. If your angle's off, what you need to do is adjust the lift up and down. What I mean by that is when we talked about the corner where I tightened that one leg up, I have this leg snug right now, and I estimated where I should be. I'm right where I need to be. If this was off, what I would do is I would loosen that bolt up and lift this up a little higher and then tilt it, because the top, as I said, is level, the bottom's flat. This section here would have to go up and down, and that would change the angle of this rail till you get it to the right position. Normally it's going to come up a little bit. The way our legs are designed, as we showed earlier, they slide up and down. So normally you're going to have to lift it up, because as you run the rail, it's going to lay down because it's so big and so heavy. So it's always laid down on the floor at the top. So the middle, you're going to always have to lift it up to get the proper angles. Okay, if in fact this is not installed properly and you've got the wrong angle, when you load the chair on it, what will happen is as the customer comes down, if the top is level and this is off, the chair will not ride level through the turn and through the straight section. It'll be cocked one way or the other. And you don't want that, because then the customer's going to feel like they're falling from one side to the other. There are adjustments on the chair where you can adjust it a little bit either direction, but if the top's level and it's square at that point, it's going to be square and level everywhere else unless the angles are set wrong, because everything's based off of a level start, and then everything else goes to an angle based on what the rails are sitting at. What we're going to do is we're going to take the seat to the top of the staircase and load it on the rail. In some applications, we have what's called a drop nose, which is this, where the rail goes straight to the ground. Gets the chair close to the ground and gets it close to the steps. However, as you can see, to slide this onto this rail, because your back has roller on it and a bottom piece that has to go onto this rail, there's no way to put it on here. So we have to start at the top of the staircase, mount it, and then we'll bring it down here and check our clearance from the staircase before we tighten anything onto the floor. When you get to the top of the stairs, if you have a wooden floors like we do in this house, put a pad down or something when you set the chair down, because the chair is heavy enough that if you move it around much, you could damage their floor. We have the chair at the top of the stairs. We have it sitting on a piece of foam so we don't damage the floors at all. We take our mounting rail post. This is to help mount the chair on the stairs. You can see that we have rollers here and we have this. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide these onto here. Then it makes it easier because it holds some of the weight of the chair when we ride it on to get to this piece. Once we get to there, you can see our sprockets here and our gear rack is here, so you can't slide it all the way on. It's going to hit that gear rack. That's why we mounted the chair ahead of time, and we have it so we can turn the chair on. Once we get it on here, we're going to turn it on and then drive it onto the rail. The other way. And there's the chair on the rail. Okay, now we have the chair on the rail. What we're going to do is we're going to run the chair all the way down around the corner and try to set that corner. And again, our spacing from the back, from the wall to this cover that goes over the rail, we're going to get as close to that corner as possible and make it look as nice as we can for the customer. Once we got it on, we remove this mounting post. You just keep it in your toolbox for a later install if you ever need to do one. So at that point, we're going to start running the chair down the rail. When we go to run it down, you have to be careful with the staircase you have. In a case like this, the staircase really shouldn't go anywhere. However, once I start to move it, we're going to have the gentleman hold the rail at the top just to make sure there's not too much weight that it doesn't tilt forward towards me. It runs nice and smooth. It's almost like a roller coaster. We have round rollers on the pipe, and they go on either side of it, and the bottom is on the top and bottom of that piece of rail. Okay, so in this place, because we have this post here, what we're going to do is run the chair around it and get it as close to the post as possible to give the owner as much space as he possibly can for his knees in front of it. So you can see when we're on this edge, we have a lot of clearance here. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and shift the whole unit back just a little bit. Okay, you can see we closed this gap quite a bit. So now we're just going to run it around again and check and make sure we're not catching or anywhere close to anything on either side. And we're really nice and clear. So now we're going to take a quick measurement on either side to make sure it's even. So this point's even, and then we'll straighten out going up the staircase so it's even on the rail all the way up and all the way down, and we'll just move it in and out a little bit to make it sit exactly where it should be. Okay, now what we've done is we've checked our clearance here. We're good on both sides of this post. We've moved it in so it's as close as we can get to here to give us as much space here. So now that we know that this is good, this is the only turn in our real staircase, so we're going to tighten this leg down to the floor and give that as our pivot point. Once we tighten that down, then what we'll do is we'll go to the bottom and then go to the top and push the rail to the position so it's even all the way up so it matches the handrail and looks nice and is nice and straight and has the same spacing. Right now the rail is actually pushed in a little bit at the top, and the reason we do that is so that when you go to mount it, you can pull it out a little bit. The rail flexes a little bit from side to side, so we want it so it's in a little tighter and you pull it out a little bit and then bolt it to the floor. So we're going to start putting those screws in right now. Okay, so now that we've got the first screw in, we're going to take this piece of pipe, we're going to measure off the wall, and I'm exactly where I want to be right there. So now we're going to set this foot. Okay, now what we're going to do, since we've mounted these two, you can see the rail is getting really tight now. So the back screw is not tight yet. We're still floating a little bit. We have this one mounted and that one mounted. So we're going to tighten these, and the rest of them that are floating, like this one is supposed to be, the rest of them that are floating, like here, what we're going to do is we're going to bolt those down. After they're bolted down, then we will tighten this screw. We don't want to tighten it ahead of time because if you have carpet, this is going to shrink down into the carpet. If you have it tight ahead of time, it's going to pull the rail and try to twist the rail, and you're going to tweak it a little bit. So you want this to be loose. So the ones we use to set it with, they're mounted, so these all are floating. Tighten them into the carpet, then tighten this screw up tight. So now we're going to go through and just tighten all the feet to the floor. Okay, we tightened the bottom up, and we know the bottom and through the first turn is tight to the floor. So now this piece, these legs are all floating at this point. So if we had carpet, even if we don't have carpet, you want to tighten this to the floor first, then tighten it to the rail. But we're going to tighten all these legs in place first, but we're going to set the rail where we want it. Right now the rail's a little close to this wall. If you look at the top, well, we're going to just go up there, we're going to pull it out, and we're going to take our tape measure and ensure that we're even and square with this handrail. Then we will tighten these to the floor and then tighten the screw in the back. It's exactly where we want it, and that looks nice and square to the stairs. So we're going to go to the very top, the last one, and we're going to tighten that one to the floor. Do that one right there. Now that that's tight, we can recheck our measurements, and we are exactly the same as the bottom. If you look at the staircase, when you go up and down, from a customer standpoint, it's square and even with the handrail. As you can see, we're straight with the handrail. It matches the top and the bottom. If you look at the bottom from the top here, you can also see the bottom where the chair is sitting, that it's nice and even and square. customer should be very happy because it matches both sides. It looks very nice. Okay, we've got the entire unit installed. We're going to go back to the studio to show you how the charge stations get installed. Here on job site, it's very difficult to get a camera back in there and show you the charge station and how the wires get hooked up and how they get leveled to the chair. So we're going to go back to the studio and show how to mount the charge station on the rail, how to adjust the charge station on the rail, how to connect the wires and the wiring for the charge stations, and then we'll come back to the site and show you the finished product. Welcome to the Harmar Studio. What we're going to do now is we're going to work with the chassis. We're going to show how it comes out of the box, how to take the cover off, how to install the batteries, how to reset the remote if it needs to be reset or you change remotes. We're going to show how the seat goes on, where the magnet is, that the safety is. We're going to show how to put the charge stations on the rail and set them properly so that when it comes in and parks, they're charging properly. Okay, we've removed the 4 screws. Now the cover, because it's on so tight, is easier if you keep the footrest up, slide it down a little bit, then pull the footrest down and then pull it out of the back. If the footrest is down all the way we've got it trimmed here, it looks real nice and covers these hinges, but when you go to pull it forward, it binds a little bit. So you need to keep the footrest up a little to get the cover off. Once the cover's off, set it aside, and then you can see inside here. You get the 2 batteries and you get a plastic bag. In the plastic bag is a wire, connectors for the charge stations, 2 grommets for the wire that comes out of the rail, and a little tiny Allen head screw. That screw is going to actually hold the seat on, which is going to go into a spot here we're going to talk about in a minute. We're going to take the batteries, we're going to stick them inside the chassis, and they go right next to each other. And there's a red wire and a black wire. These 2 wires get connected to the positive on the one battery, the negative on the other battery, and you put your jumper between the 2 batteries. Okay, now that we've got the batteries installed, we want to just mention that the circuit board right here on this side is actually your wireless remote. If for any reason you have to reprogram the remote or add a remote and you have to get the memory in, there's a button on the remote. You can't really see it very well in this application. It's in the manual. It's covered very well on how to reset it, but we wanted to make sure you knew where the board was. All right, now we're going to move on to the seat. All right, now that we've got the batteries in and we talked about the remote, we're going to install the seat. So we're going to pick the seat up. We're going to look at the wires on the bottom. We're going to feed these down through this hole and it pops out the bottom here. Make sure there's a little bit of lubricant on this shaft because it's going to rotate in here. There's bearings in here, but you want to have a little bit of white lithium or some kind of light grease on it. And then we're just going to take the chair and drop the wires down through this hole into the bottom. Okay, then we drop the seat coming out here. The seat should drop the rest of the way down and lock into place. And we're going to connect these 2 wires together. The wires go up to the toggle switch in the arm. When you saw the wires, there was 2 sets. The reason there's 2 sets is both arms have wires in them. So if the customer sees the need to have the joystick or the toggle switch on the other arm, the wires are already in there for you. All you have to do is move the switch over and the wires are here and ready to go. Okay, as we talked earlier in that bag we had that had the connectors and things in it for the batteries, there's a set screw. This is what the set screw looks like. So you've got your set screw and you're going to put it in this hole and tighten it up. And what that's going to do is, when we slid the chair down, you saw there was a groove in the piece of steel that goes down in. This goes into that groove to hold it in so the chair doesn't lift up and out. So you just drive it all the way in, just snug it down a little bit. Don't kill it, because if you kill it, it'll restrict the rotation of the chair. But it's going to be there so the chair never lifts up or out. Once that's set in and snugged, you're done with this part. You can now put the cover back on. Okay, now that we've got the chair mounted, the batteries in, everything like that set, we've moved the chair out of the way a little bit so we have a little better view. I've pre-mounted the charge station on the rail. This is what the charge stations look like when you get them in the box. There's a plastic cover over it, 2 bolts that hold it on. The charge station itself is spring loaded. So you're going to want to set this so when the chair comes in, it hits these and compresses them a certain amount. Because we're going to mount it on the rail, I've got one that's already pre-mounted. Okay, so we've got a charge station mounted on the rail. I've got the cover off. You can see that we're clamped on the rail. There's 1 Allen screw that holds it in place. You're just going to tighten that down. There's 2 adjustments here so you can move it up, down, left, and right. And then the 2 springs charge stations are here. Okay, remember when we were at the house, we ran the wire through the pipe, and at both ends we tied it on the pipe so we wouldn't lose it. What I've done is I've stripped the wires back a little bit to show the copper. We have a tail that goes to our power supply. This is going to get crimped together with some connectors that are in the bag that we showed earlier for the connectors for the battery. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick minute I'm going to connect these, and then we're going to go back and show you what it looks like when they're connected. Okay, so what we've done is we've crimped on our connectors here. You can see we have the tail that goes to the charging station. We have the wire that goes to the rail. The reason we do this is so that when the wire goes through the rail, it comes out to the other charge station on the other end of the system. So when the chair is at the very bottom or very top, it'll have a charging station there. You have the opportunity to install a mid-station landing. The mid-station landing looks like this. It's a little smaller cover, and it's got the same spring-loaded chassis charging. But what this is for is if you wanted to have your chair sit on this part of the rail, you could attach it to the rail here, and the chair would actually sit in this area. Normal application has one at the top and one at the bottom. If you have a mid-station landing, like a bi-level house where you want to stop the chair there, or just a landing somewhere else in the house you want it to sit, you can put this charge station in. This one doesn't stop the unit from coming past. The other ones have actually a stop, and we'll show you that as we bring the chair up and start setting it. This one, the chair just drives right by it. Okay, so we've got this mounted. We tied our wires together. Now we're going to take these wires and attach them to this charge station. We took the screw out earlier. We put the screw in the connector. Okay, we took our screw, we took the connector and put the screw straight through it, and we're just going to snug it down on the spring-loaded connector. Okay, we showed where the wires connect and how they go with the spring-loaded charge station. We brought the chassis up now to show the charging strips that are on the chassis and the charge station, because what we're going to do is we're going to bring the chassis in to the charge station and align them. Okay, now we brought the chair even closer, and you can see I can adjust this down, up, left, right, and I can also adjust it around. So the question is, how do we get it aligned best? So we kind of snug this up a little bit. I lined them up. If you look straight down it as you're seeing it coming in, the chassis is coming straight in. So right now, if I hit it right there, you can see I'm compressing the springs, because if I bring it up, you can see they uncompressed. So I can put it right there, and what I'll do is, at that point, you can see we're dead center. So we would snug these two bolts up. Okay, we've aligned everything. We've moved the chair out a little bit so we can have it drive in and check to make sure how much these springs move. And I think I'm going to align pretty good, so we're going to run it in there and see what happens and how it looks. So you can see as the chair comes in, it touched them, it drove them right up, and when it hits the pin here, it stops. Perfect. We have our wires connected. We would put this cover on, and there you have a nice clean installation. The wires are hidden, this is covered, and when the chassis is in here parked, this will all be hidden by this plastic cover. Okay, now that we've got our charge station connected, what we're going to have to do is hook our power supply to it. So the power supply was in a separate box. It's got a 6-foot cord on it and another length of cord. That what we've done is we've put a connector on it so that you can connect to this gray tail. And that way, if anything happens to the charger or anything, you don't have to unwire things. You can just disconnect it right here. You plug this together, plug it in, and you'll get a green light on the power supply. As long as you have a green light on the power supply, you're ready to go. Okay, we're almost done the complete installation. One of the last things we want to make sure of is this is what's going to stop the chair, but you want to put a safety on the rail. So make sure you install that. You just have to snug it up. You don't have to kill it on the rail, but just snug it up so it doesn't fall off the rail. And the sprocket, if it hits it, it will jam the rail. So right now we're done the installation basically. The chair's on, the rail's done. Okay, so everything we did with the upper charge station, we do with the lower charge station. And if you look at the bottom of the rail, you can see there's another charge station down there. The chair will stop at that charge station. Now that everything's done, we're going to run the chair up and down. We have an emergency stop on the side of the chair. We have a power on and off switch. We have an access port. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, about what we can do with a PC on the unit. And then we have three lights that are status lights. We also have a seat belt for the unit, and you should always instruct your customer to make sure they wear the seat belt for safety. The armrests fold up. The seat folds up and down, and the footrest folds up and down. With the footrest up, you can see that we have a bottom piece here. This actually has safeties in it. It goes from side to side. Okay, as we're going down, there's 3 safeties. There's one on the rail that stops you. There's one at the bottom near the steps that'll stop you. And there's one on the footrest that'll stop you. As soon as you hit that, it'll stop. We have the same on the other side. There's 3 different lights. There's a power on light, a status light that is green, and the bottom light is a yellow light that when it sits on the charge station will blink. It'll blink more rapidly if the batteries are low. It'll slow down as the batteries are fully charged. But that light should blink. If it's not blinking, you're not on the charge station properly. So now that the unit's sitting here, you can hear the tones. So if I hit one of these safeties, it has a tone. If the unit sits off the charging station for too long, it'll start beeping. It'll beep, I think it beeps 6 or 8 beeps. then it'll stop for about 30 seconds, and it'll beep it again until you put it on the charge station. As we talked about the safeties, there's one more safety. There's a safety in the seat. The seat has a swivel. However, if you turn the swivel, you can hear a tone. The reason it's got a tone is you're breaking the sensor. Once the seat's swiveled, the chassis will not move. One other thing we've added with the Helix product, and you'll see it on the Pinnacle also later, we have a diagnostic port that we talked about that you can plug into. You can connect to your computer. Okay, you can hear the unit beeping. The unit's beeping because it's not sitting on a charge station. As we talked about earlier, if the unit's not on a charge station, it beeps. You hear it just stopped. On here, it's still telling me I've got a charge, that I'm not on a charge station. So the beeping is going to come back again until we clear it. With this tool, though, you can see that whenever you hit a safety, whether it's the rail, the footrest, or the side of the chair, it turns on a red light that tells you which part is at fault. If one of the switches has failed, it'll tell you that that switch is not working properly. So for diagnosing it and troubleshooting in the field, huge tool. Going to be great for us in the future. You also can see the voltage. So you can have a guy with a meter, but you can also use this. So as soon as you hook up to it, you can tell how much power is coming out of the power supply and also how much power the batteries in the unit have. There's also a speed indicator. It'll tell you how fast the motor's running up and down. With all that said, this is a tool that we have for troubleshooting the unit in the field. This tool will save you time and money in the field. We're really excited about this enhancement to this product line, and it's going to be great for the support and service in the future for this product line. One more thing I wanted to show everybody. If the chair is not level, or the customer doesn't like where it's sitting, or they like it tilted a little bit uphill, because a lot of people do, the way to adjust that is this joint right here. What you do is you loosen the nut that's at the top here. You can see I've got it a little bit loose. There's a set screw right here in this hole. You take that set screw out, unscrew this, then take this joint here and turn it up or down depending on which way they want the chair to sit. It'll tilt the chair to the right or the left on the rail. That's your final adjustment to make the chair sit where the customer wants it. Then tighten this back up, tighten your set screw, lock this nut in place, and you're all set. Normally the chair comes out leveled with the top piece of rail. However, in some homes, once you go to put it in, you'll find out that it's off a little bit one way or the other because the top of the stairs are not totally level. So you can adjust the chair from left to right by using this joint. And again, some customers don't like it level coming down the stairs because they feel like they're falling a little bit. So you can adjust it here and tilt it so it tilts up the stairs a little bit. But then when it's parked in a level spot, it's going to lean a little bit. But you can adjust it using this joint. Okay, one more thing we want to talk about, wireless remotes. The units come with 2 remotes. They're radio frequency, so the chair, if it's in another room or at the top of the stairs around a corner, when you hit the down button, it's going to start coming and moving. So you need to make sure that the customer knows if there's anything in its way, it's going to try and come on its own. So make sure you go over that with them, and as we talked about earlier, you can reprogram it. So you can have 4 remotes, 5 remotes, as many in the house as you want. You just have to program them. Once that's taken care of, the big thing, which is a really good thing for you to go over with the customer, is our owner's manual. In the owner's manual, everything we've talked about is covered. There's some pictures of the chair, all the safety features, all the lights. So go through that and make sure the customer understands all that information. Our last page of the owner's manual is their warranty card. So you should have them fill that out, send it into Harmar so that they have the warranty for the unit. With that said, we're done at the studio. We're going to go back to the house and finish the install. Okay, now that we've showed you how the charge stations get connected, we come back to the house. The chair is obviously installed. You can see the wire running across the floor of the charge stations. There's only a couple last things you have to do to finish this up to make a nice clean install. First off, make sure all your end caps are installed. There's a cap that goes on each pipe at the bottom, and then there's a cap that goes on each leg to make sure it's clean and nice and neat and everything's good. Then you demo to your customer, show them how everything works, the folding seat, the armrest, make sure they go through it, and you have a great clean install and a happy customer. I'm Brian Watkinson with Harmar. Thank you very much.